So Justin Haskins is the editorial director for the Heartland Institute, editor-in-chief of StoppingSocialism.com, and he is the co-author of the new book you should order right now, and it is called The Great Reset. This is my new book. Let me grab it here. This is my new book that is coming out in January. Joe Biden and the Rise of the 21st Century Fascism, The Great Reset. You can find it on Amazon. Pre-order it now. Do it now so you make sure you get your copy. This is kind of an important thing to say because of the problem with the supply chain. If you order them now, you'll make sure you get it by the first week that it is out. They take sometimes we're afraid of running out of these because they will take 5 months for a reprint because of the supply chain. So please order your copy now. It comes out early January. It's my new book, The Great Reset. Justin, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Glenn. It's good to be with you.
So every time we talk, it's usually after a few days where I'm like, gosh, this should all be in the book, too. I mean, it's moving so incredibly fast. So let's start at the beginning. Glasgow is all about climate change. And the one thing we learned about the Paris Climate Accords was that's not the important part of what happened in Paris, correct?
That's right. So back in 2015, when we had COP21, this is now COP26 in Glasgow, everyone was focused on the Paris Climate Agreement. Everyone was focused on the terms that these governments were coming up with that really didn't have any teeth to them in many cases, when they should have been paying attention to what was going on behind the scenes between corporations and activist groups and banks and financial institutions and investors. That was where the real action was occurring. And what we now know of as the Great Reset, much of that framework, not all of it, but much of it was actually being built in Paris while the world was paying attention to the Paris Climate Agreement. And a lot of us, including people who are critics of all of this, including people like you and me, we missed it because we weren't paying attention to these other meetings that were occurring at the same time where the real action actually is. That's what we need to stay focused on with Glasgow.
Okay, and so Glasgow has the Financial Alliance for Net Zero. This is what happened last week. And there's some things, and I just want you to explain these if you can. GFANZ, what is that? GFANZ.
Right. So that's an acronym standing for the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero.
Okay.
This is a group of coalitions of people in the financial industry globally.
So these are the banks, and there was how many banks? 84 banks met in Glasgow last week, right?
There's 84 banks that are meeting, and they're meeting this week, I believe. But
okay.
Yeah, the 84 banks as part of the Net Zero Banking Alliance. But there are insurance companies involved in this. There are investment groups involved in this, and they're all part of these other sub-alliances that all fall underneath the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero.
Just so you know, the NZIA is the Net Zero Insurance Alliance. The NZAOA is the Net Zero Asset Owner Alliance. What is that?
This is going to be like pension funds and some investment groups, things like that.
Okay, so that's like Blackstone.
Well, BlackRock and things. BlackRock might be included under that. If they're not under that, they're under one of the other groups.
Okay, all right. So 84 banks, 36 countries. They control $64 trillion in assets. What have they pledged to do?
What they're pledging to do is they're pledging to remove all of fossil fuels from their entire portfolios. This means not just their own companies. We're not talking about, well, they're pledging to get rid of fossil fuels and put solar panels on the roof of the corporate headquarters. We're talking about them saying that they are pledging not to allow anyone in their company to do business with people who are engaged in using fossil fuels, including getting loans, including having bank accounts, including in the case of insurance companies, they won't insure you. And again, it's not just are you in the fossil fuel industry? We're talking about, are you totally committed to battling climate change regardless of what your business is? So this is an attempt to force the entire global economy, essentially, especially in the West, to adopt climate change policies that the Joe Biden administration and others want.
And the other thing is it will affect you if you're just a homeowner. If you haven't zip stripped everything, if you haven't put, the kind of insulation that they want, the roofing, if you haven't put solar panels up, et cetera, or if you're trying to buy a house and it doesn't include those things, these banks will say that's not a green house and you'll have to make it green to either sell it or to buy it, right?
Well, it's going to either happen from the banks or from the insurance companies or from both, right? Because if you're going to get a mortgage, you have to first get an insurance company to say that they're going to insure your house. But if the insurance company says, we're not going to insure your house because you're not committed to climate change, there's no solar panels on the roof, so we'll only insure it once you put solar panels on the roof, then you won't be able to get the mortgage from the bank, even if the bank doesn't care. So they're hitting you from all sorts of different angles here to make sure that you comply. That's the long-term goal.
And this is, honestly, the Great Reset, the goal is you won't own anything by 2030. This is a way to force people out of their homes. I mean, if you have a home and it's not deemed green, you'll lose your insurance. And so you won't be able to continue to live in your house. You'll have to sell it to somebody, most likely like a Blackstone that is willing to, or BlackRock, that is willing to go in and greenify whole neighborhoods. This is what AOC said when we're going to green all of the infrastructure, all homes, all businesses in America. They're not doing it through handouts. They're going to be doing it through pressure on the individual, and most individuals won't be able to afford it.
Right, and that's the key part of this, right, is that even if you have people who might want to go along with this stuff or they don't care and they just want to, you won't be able to afford it. So the reason you see Blackstone and BlackRock and a bunch of other groups buying up lots of real estate and property, way overpaying what the property is worth, some cases they're paying 50% more than what the asking price is because they know that over the next 20 or 30 years, that property is going to become so much more valuable than it is right now. And they'll be able to charge rent at rates that are twice what they are today or more, because people are not going to be able to afford to buy their own property.
And you know what's crazy?
What groups are preparing for that?
What's crazy, Justin, is they've made evil landowners. They've made them look like these evil people that just are ripping people off, when a lot of people who buy rental houses and then rent them out are not rich, nor are they evil. But that's the system they're creating, that it will only be the really rich people like Blackstone that will own these things, and they know going in these houses are going to be unaffordable for most people, and you won't have a choice. I mean, we are sitting at the Mr. Potter kind of moment where we're either picking for Jimmy Stewart and the local bank, or we're going Mr. Potter's way, and the country will be Pottersville.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And that's what made all of these policies that made it impossible for people to evict individuals who weren't paying their rent so damaging, is that those were the small-time people who were really hurt by that. That wasn't the BlackRocks and the Blackstones, these big, massive corporations that have billions of dollars in the bank. They can afford to eat those losses for a little while people aren't paying their rent. But just the guy who has a couple of rental properties and he's got income on the side, or that's his primary income, that person can't afford to lose that income for a whole year. Mm-hmm. And so it drove all of those people out of business, in some cases into bankruptcy. It forced them to sell those properties to companies like Blackstone and BlackRock. All of this wealth and property and stock and all of these things are being consolidated. And it's gotten worse and worse and worse since COVID happened, but it's been happening for a while. And that's really what all of this is about. When they talk about you not being able to own property, it's not that they're just going to seize the property from you. It's that they're going to put all these policies into place. They've already done it, that are going to push most people out of the possibility of being able to own it for one reason or another. And the only people that will be able to control it are these big, gigantic corporations, investment managers, banks, who are all on board with the policies that the elites want.
If you want to make a change, if you don't like this direction, you must get your money out of these banks. The Amalgamated Bank, that's the largest union bank, SEIU, in the country. Bank of America, Citi, JP Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, and Wells Fargo. These are the 7 largest and most influential banks in the United States that have joined the alliance, 3 of them last month alone. Amalgamated Bank, Bank of America, Citi, JP Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, and Wells Fargo. Get your money into a local bank. If you just say, well, I'll do that some other time. They are making these policies right now. And if America doesn't start saying, you're not getting any of my money, you're not getting any of my money, you are part of the problem, and put them into the smaller banks, because the smaller banks are going to be gobbled by these big banks. They're going to be run out of business because they won't have an opportunity. They won't have the money to do all of the stuff that these big 7 banks know they won't have the money. So you've got to take your money out of their coffers and let them know they have a financial fight in front of them. We're not just going to go along with this. Do it this week. Amalgamated Bank, Bank of America, Citi, JP Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, and Wells Fargo.